Greetings, adventurers. You're listening to The Quiet Journeys of Professor Atwood with me, Professor Atwood. I'm glad you're here, and I can't wait to tell you about my latest journey. Don't worry, it's a safe space. I'll handle all the danger for you. I designed these stories to help you relax, chill anxiety, and go to sleep. Maybe they'll even put a smile on your face, even if it's a sleepy smile. So please, settle in, relax, and prepare to quietly drift off with me to parts known, unknown, and even some places in between. Comfortable? Very well. Let's get underway. Hello, adventurers. I hope you're doing well. As you remember from last time, things were settling down in the alternate universe Madagascar. Our chef, Beverly, had won the Oceanic Chef Challenge with some surprise appetizers that put her over the top. But most importantly, Beverly and Jillian, her Oceanic Chef Challenger, had reconciled and became friends again, ending a long-standing falling out. The competition was to not only have them get their rivalry out of their system once and for all, but to get the chromite we needed to finish repairs. We were in a universe devoid of cheese, and we made an arrangement with Professor Niles and the alternate universe Madagascar scientists to trade the secret to making cheese for the chromite we needed to facilitate repairs. Everything went mostly according to plan, with the exception of mice the size of rats and some flying cabbages. Now, we needed to load the chromite, finish repairs, and get back home. It would be easier said than done, and I'll tell you all about it in a moment. But first, I need to talk to you about a few things. You may have noticed some ads on the show. I hope they're unobtrusive. It's a good thing and a milestone for the show. And of course, the more you listen, the better it is, so please, keep doing what you're doing. Now, I promise there won't be any midway rolling ads in the middle to break the story experience, so we'll limit these canned ads, as they're known in the business, to the beginning and the end only. Scientifically, that's a fair compromise, I think. But if you don't want any ads at all, that's an option too for White Cat Adventures Club members. But that's not all you'll get. You'll get some great extras, too, in the White Cat Adventurers Club, like news, early access to the other podcast shows, access to my irregular journal, exclusive news about the company and upcoming projects, a bonus episode of another show called What Are You Watching, and more. But as another bonus, you'll get ad-free listening for all the shows. And member tiers have ad-free listening starting at the $5 level, so it doesn't matter which one you start with, you'll be able to get the ad-free listening. The main thing is to support the show. Science and exploring is expensive, and your support helps make it happen. There's multiple tiers and levels of membership, and at $20 you could even get like an exclusive t-shirt. At the $10 tier you could get the graphic novels included. You could also get a couple of soundscapes, and at $20 you get an exclusive t-shirt only for Adventurers Club members. So if you ever wanted to have a t-shirt with a cat and a pith helmet, that's the way to go. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/whitecatentertainment and enjoy the access your way. But now, adventurers, we have another way to help too. If you go to the website, whitecatentertainment.com, now, if you don't want to be a member, or if you don't want to have a recurring membership fee, you could just do a one-time science help out, I guess is something that we could call it. So if you want to go to the website and do a one-time science help out, you could do that too, and you could donate anything you like to the company, and that will, of course, go a long way to graduated cylinders and microscopes, of course. So I also want you to go to the podcast show player of your choice and rate the program with lots of stars or leave a review. Reviews are great, and Bradley and I read all of them, and we are so very touched by all the nice things you're saying about the show. You see, ratings, reviews, and subscriptions awake the sleeping algorithm. That algorithm will then start pushing the show to all the people who may not know about it and may need it so they can discover it. So it's all important for sure. So please rate the show, subscribe, and add some stars. If you want to add a review too, that's extra great as well. Like I said, it's always nice to read pleasant things about what we're doing over here. Thank you, adventurers, and just remember, you have to be logged in to your preferred podcast platform to leave a rating or review, as anonymous praise is frowned upon. Now, let's get back to the story. With the big oceanic chef competition and rivalry behind us, we could all focus on loading the chromite and finishing repairs. The chromite had already been prepared in good faith, so it was just a matter of getting it loaded onto Professor Felice's ship, the Wayfarer. Then we had to finish repairs on the storm energy harvesting system, and then the wormhole generator. But all the prep work had been completed, so it wouldn't take too long. At least, we hoped it wouldn't. Professor Felice and his crew got right to work finishing the repairs, and I also assisted along with my crew. As we were working on the storm energy harvester, one of the alternate universe Italian scientists working in Madagascar, Sal, was reading about pizza and was incredibly excited. Chad had told him all about our pizza and shared some articles with him, mostly generated from our New York. Thankfully, with compatible Wi-Fi, Chad was able to share some pizza recipes and reviews from some elitist pizza blogs. Sal, who specialized in chemical gastrology, was one of the lead scientists on the cheese initiative, although thought there was always something missing in pizza. Cheese, he excitedly added, would change everything. In fact, he had the chefs at the Madagascar Port Science Facility make us different types of pizza to try to get our opinion on everything from thin crust to deep dish, all now with cheese. We appreciated it, and it gave Beverly and Jillian the afternoon off as they didn't have to prepare lunch. We all took a break from working and sampled the pizza, now with cheese, possibly the first ones ever made in this dimension. Sal wanted to hear about the history of pizza and how it differed in our dimension. I was happy to oblige. What's interesting is that the history of pizza begins in antiquity, as various ancient cultures produced basic flatbreads with several toppings. A precursor of pizza was probably the focaccia, a flatbread known to the Romans as panis focaccius, to which toppings were then added. Modern pizza evolved from similar flatbread dishes in Naples, Italy, in the 18th or early 19th century. The word pizza was first documented in 997 AD in Gaeta and successfully in different parts of central and southern Italy. Pizza was mainly eaten in Italy and by emigrants from there. This changed after World War II, when Allied troops stationed in Italy came to enjoy pizza along with other Italian foods. Now, Sal had asked what World War II was because they didn't have it in his dimension, and I told them that would probably need a whole other day to explain, so he was satisfied that we just stuck to talking about pizza. Now, modern pizza evolved from similar flatbread dishes in Naples, Italy, in the 18th or early 19th century. Before that time, flatbread was often topped with ingredients such as garlic, salt, lard, and cheese. It is uncertain when tomatoes were first added, and there are many conflicting claims. Up until about 1830, pizza was sold from open-air stands and out of pizza bakeries. Everyone wants credit for inventing pizza, apparently. Pizza was taken to the United States by Italian immigrants in the late 19th century and first appeared in areas where they concentrated. The country's first pizzeria, Lombardi's, opened in New York City in 1905. Following World War II, veterans returning from the Italian campaign, who were introduced to Italy's native cuisine, proved a ready market for pizza in particular. Regardless, we enjoyed the pizza, and for a first go, Sal and his chefs did a fine job. It was a nice break, and we were soon back to work. I also took this opportunity to once again check in with my crew. Our oceanic chef, Beverly, was just beaming in the glow of a competition won and a friendship reconciled. We found the snacks were extra tasty today. Frank, our engineer/diver, was exhausted from helping with the repairs and was spending some time with his new pet cricket, Barney, who seemed to be chirping happily. Charles, our medic, commented that he was glad he wasn't needed more on this adventure and that his dimensional tests came back negative. There didn't seem to be any ill effects from protracted exposure to another universe. Well, we were in a Type 1 multiverse that was similar to our own, so Charles added that that may not be true next time. I told him I was hoping there would not be a next time, but you never know with science and adventuring. Colin, our navigator, had finally acclimated to being in an alternate dimension and told me he and his sextant were taking a break, and he was navigating solo for now using maps and charts, and found it relaxing to compare ocean currents between dimensions since we had compatible Wi-Fi. Captain Flynn and his former hidden pirate first mate Byron were probably the most eager to get home. They both liked being on the sea, and a sea they recognized. While they appreciated Beverly's upgraded snack offerings, they were eager and antsy to get home and were performing safety checks and inspections at an increased rate and pace. But all in all, everyone seemed to be in good spirits, and the anticipation of getting back home was shared collectively, myself included. Now, wormholes were new to Professor Niles and his scientists, despite scientific endeavors being incredibly well-funded and respected globally in this universe. Again, it was something I would definitely miss about this universe. Anyway, I shared our data with him as he wanted to help us get home as best he could. As we sat in my ready room on the recovery, I told him that most of the data from our dimension was theoretical, with the exception of what Professor Felice and I myself had collected and experienced. Professor Felice brought us through to his dimension, and I had traveled through time. Professor Niles' eyes went wide when he heard this and then smiled. He said, "In a universe that invented cheese, I suppose anything is possible." I began with saying that the wormhole theory postulates that a passage through space-time could create shortcuts for long journeys across the universe. Wormholes are predicted by the theory of general relativity. But of course, wormholes bring with them the dangers of sudden collapse, high radiation, and dangerous contact with exotic matter. Honestly, those things Professor Felice and I generally were able to account for. It was being thrown off course through time or into alternate dimensions that we had to be careful of. Again, I told Professor Niles, with the caveat that these people and theories pertain to our own dimension, that wormholes were first theorized in 1916, though that wasn't what they were called at the time. While reviewing another physicist's solution to the equations in Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity, Austrian physicist Ludwig Flamm realized another solution was possible. He described a white hole, a theoretical time reversal of a black hole. Entrances to both black and white holes could be connected by a space-time conduit. And, basically this is what happened to me when I was accidentally stranded in the Paleozoic era a while back, after first being stranded in the 80s, of course. Now, not the worst thing in the world, and it was fantastic to literally revisit and relive that bit of my formative years, as I found a Radio Shack to get the parts I needed for repairs. After stopping off first at the arcade, of course. I'll admit I even stopped at a Sam Goody and a Walden Books to ironically see what the new releases were that year. But I digress. Anyway, I continued my discussion with Professor Niles. In 1935, Einstein and physicist Nathan Rosen used the theory of general relativity to elaborate on the idea, proposing the existence of bridges through space-time. These bridges connect two different points in space-time, theoretically creating a shortcut that could reduce travel time and distance. The shortcuts came to be known as the Einstein-Rosen bridges, or wormholes. For a simplified notion of a wormhole, space can be visualized as a two-dimensional surface. In this case, a wormhole would appear as a hole in that surface, lead it to a 3D tube, the inside surface of a cylinder, then re-emerge at another location on the 2D surface with a hole similar to the entrance. An actual wormhole would be analogous to this, but with the spatial dimensions raised by 1. For example, instead of circular holes on a 2D plane, the entry and exit points would be visualized as spherical holes in 3D space, leading into a 4-dimensional tube similar to a spherender. Now, spherenders do exist. I did not make up that word. Another way to imagine wormholes is to take a sheet of paper and draw 2 somewhat distant points on one side of the paper. The sheet of paper represents a plane in the space-time continuum, and the 2 points represent a distance to be traveled, but theoretically a wormhole could connect these 2 points by folding that plane, in other words the paper, so the points are touching. In this way, it would be much easier to traverse the distance since the 2 points are now touching. Like I said, Einstein-Rosen bridges are connections between areas of space that can be modeled as vacuum solutions to the Einstein field equations, and that are now understood to be intrinsic parts of the maximally extended version of the Schwarzschild metric, describing an eternal black hole with no charge and no rotation. Here, maximally extended refers to the idea that the space-time should not have any edges. It should be possible to continue this path arbitrarily far into the particle's future or past for any possible trajectory of a free-falling particle, following a geodesic in the space-time. In this space-time, it is possible to come up with coordinate systems such that if a hypersurface of constant time, a set of points that all have the same time coordinate, such that every point on the surface has a space-like separation, giving what is called a space-like surface, is picked and an embedding diagram drawn depicting the curvature of space at that time, the embedding diagram will look like a tube connecting the 2 exterior regions. But again, much easier to just call it an Einstein-Rosen bridge. This was, of course, the basis of both Professor Felice's research and my own. Wormholes connect 2 points in space-time. That means they allow travel in time as well as space. In 1988, Morris, Thorne, and Yurtsever worked out how to convert a wormhole traversing space into one traversing time by accelerating one of its 2 mouths. However, according to general relativity, it would not be possible to use a wormhole to travel back to a time earlier than when the wormhole was first converted into a time machine. Until this time, it could not have been noticed or have been used. Again, that's one theory that I've already proven incorrect, but that's okay. I mean, that was 1988, and a lot has happened since then. Anyway, I explained to Professor Niles that this was mostly theoretical, and I had to add my own data as well as Professor Felice's data to fill in the gaps between theory and actual practice. Again, going through different dimensions and time travel that actually does happen. And this brings me to another interesting point. Sometimes when you're so busy traveling through time or into other dimensions, we scientists, we simply don't have the time, no pun intended, to write and submit peer-reviewed conclusions to scientific journals. We swear we'll get around to it one day, but the truth is, it doesn't always happen. There are many discoveries out there that most people don't even know about, because scientists are just too busy doing science. And you know what? Don't even get me started on grant writing and patent submissions. But if you want an example, let me just say that if you think we should have had flying cars by now, let me assure you, we already do. Anyway, it was a lot to take in all at once, but Professor Niles and his scientists were up to the task. The one variable was power. He said despite their technology, just like in our dimension, they could not generate enough power to activate the wormhole generator on the Wayfarer. We would have to rely on Professor Felice's storm energy harvester. Professor Niles added that the issue was that we all pretty much needed a storm. But Professor Niles added sometimes you get lucky. There was a storm front brewing a few miles away on the open ocean, but it wouldn't be strong enough to harvest for the wormhole generator. I asked politely, How is that lucky? Professor Niles smiled and said that while they didn't have cheese or know anything about wormholes until our unexpected visit, they did know an awful lot about seeding clouds. He added, "Why do you think we have so many helicopters?" They could arrive early, before it was too dangerous, and increase the intensity of the storm, no problem. It would just take a little time. That was indeed good news. It looked like we would all be leaving in a day or two, depending on the intensity of the storm. Well, not all of us. There was a knock at the ready room hatch, and Chad was there with an announcement. He would not be going back with us. I had a feeling this may happen, but it was still surprising. This was another universe, after all. If you recall, I had originally said a few stories ago that there were 3 personnel conflicts I had to deal with: Bradley and Dolores, Jillian and Beverly, and the last one, Chad and an entire alternate universe. But honestly, I wasn't even sure what to call it. In fact, when it came to the alternate universe Madagascar scientists, it didn't seem like there was any conflict at all. At first it seemed touch and go, starting with the ham and cheese sandwich inappropriately eaten that sent us down a cheese rabbit hole, but honestly, everything worked out. Beverly and Jillian had reconciled, and we had all the chromite we needed to finish repairs and get back home. The alternate universe Madagascar scientists really warmed to Chad. He could do no wrong. But I was worried that could turn on a dime, as Chad rubbed everyone the wrong way eventually, according to Professor Felice and from my own observations. But maybe being in an alternate dimension changes rules, or perhaps just our expectations. Chad, in an unusual moment of clarity, poignantly admitted that he didn't really feel like he belonged in our dimension, and that was the root cause of his disinterest in, well, pretty much everything except science. He would stay and help Professor Niles and the alternate universe Madagascar scientists and chefs introduce cheese responsibly into their universe, and also find ways to deal with the rat-sized mice that would undoubtedly be quite interested in this planet-wide new cheese rollout. Professor Felice was concerned that when we left, he wouldn't be able to get back, as the wormhole generated by the Wayfarer would be a one-way trip, with the Wayfarer going through it, leaving him stranded. Chad smiled and told us to look around the table. Professor Niles and his scientists were well-equipped and well-funded, and now knew about wormholes. If he really wanted to get back, he and the other scientists could make it happen. Remember, he was an expert in chromite. Chad seemed determined, and it was clear he had made up his mind. I stopped for a moment and realized I had misjudged Chad a bit. Not completely, of course. He could still rub you the wrong way quickly and incessantly, but there was more to him than met the eye, and I should have realized that sooner. There's always more to people than you think, no matter how they present themselves. I put my arm on his shoulder and sincerely wished him well in his new universe. He looked at me, smiled, and promised not to have the people of this universe worship him like a god. I smiled back, hoping he was kidding. Professor Felice took a quiet moment alone with Chad, and I could tell they were saying an unexpectedly heartfelt goodbye. Despite the annoyances, Professor Felice did care for him. He brought him on this adventure, after all. There wasn't much time left. According to Professor Niles, the storm would be here soon, and we had to make final preparations to the Wayfarer's storm energy harvester, as he had his fleet of science helicopters increase its intensity. All the preparations were being made, but we had to get out onto the ocean to meet the storm. It was time to say goodbye. Professor Felice and I both thanked Professor Niles and his team for their assistance and wished them good luck with their new world that now had both cheese and Chad in it. Professor Niles wished us safe travels and thanked us for bringing new culinary knowledge to them. As much as I would miss Professor Niles, his alternate dimension, and his fully funded and modernized science facility with cloud-seeding helicopters of any color you choose, it was time to go home. I was eager to get back, as were both crews. We boarded our ships, battened down the hatches again, and headed straight for the gathering storm. It would be a few hours before we made it to the storm, and the helicopters had left before us to do their seeding work. After 2 hours or so, the wind and rain were picking up, and there was something comforting about it. We knew this storm was the key to us returning back home. I had the crew all secure themselves after some last-minute checks, and I joined Captain Flynn, first mate and former hidden pirate Byron, and our navigator Colin on the bridge. I gave Bradley and Dolores some time off to spend together. There was nothing they could do now anyway. They protested at first, as they both always want to be as helpful as possible, which I love about them, but they had helped enough, and we had all been through a lot. They smiled and held hands as they departed, eager to spend some time together. Soon it was clear the clouds had been successfully seeded in advance, as the storm had picked up dramatically. Now it was all up to the storm and Professor Felice's ship, the Wayfarer. The alternate Madagascar chromite turned out to be even stronger and more conductive than our chromite by about 8%, so that should make things a little easier, but there were no guarantees. We sailed into the storm, and the waves did indeed get choppy, but nothing we couldn't handle. I listened to the waves, the rain, and the wind, and like I said, it was comforting. These sounds reassured all of us that we were on our way home. All the preparations and calculations had been made and double and triple checked by myself, Professor Felice, Professor Niles, his entire alternate universe Madagascar scientific team, including a newly founded Department of Wormhole Management, and even Chad. We were confident this would work, and we would be home soon. Professor Felice stayed in constant contact and deployed his storm energy harvester, and we had a bit of luck. Not only were the winds hitting all of the floating aqua turbines, but a couple of bolts of lightning in rapid succession were collected via lightning rod and converted into usable energy almost instantly, thanks to our repairs and even a few alternate universe scientific upgrades. And just like that, we had enough energy for the Maelstrom wormhole generator. Professor Felice let us know he was activating it. Honestly, this was a welcome change from just happening upon it and being unexpectedly pulled through it, like last time. It took a few moments for the Maelstrom wormhole generator to power up, but when it did, the results were immediate. The Maelstrom began to form, slowly at first, and then the wormhole soon appeared right in front of us. We followed immediately behind the Wayfarer, and the recovery was soon pulled into the wormhole right after it. Once again, I was in a wormhole. Honestly, I didn't think I'd be in so many in such a short period of time, but there I was. The wormhole starfield rushed past the ship's bridge, and all of us were in awe once again. I know I've been through it before, but it's always pretty spectacular going through a wormhole. And then suddenly, just like before, it was over. We arrived to a sunny sky and placid water. I immediately went above deck to count the suns. Only one. I rushed back to the bridge as Colin checked all the navigation equipment. He smiled. We let the crew know, and cheering erupted on the ship, and we heard Professor Felice's crew cheer through the radio. We had done it. We were back home. A sense of joy and relief continued to fill both crews as the laughter and cheering continued. The first thing I did, of course, was engage in my favorite activity, walking the deck. Only this time, the whole crew joined me. The sun was warm, but not too warm, since there was only one, and the waves gently lapped at our ship, the Recovery, which seemed even more aptly named than before. The gentle lapping of the waves was a very welcome sound. I'm not sure what it was, but even the water and the seagulls sounded just a bit different between dimensions. I stopped for a moment and just enjoyed the sound of our ocean, in our dimension, gently breaking against our hull. Some dolphins were curious and swam around both ships for a few moments, and became bored, and soon swam away with an aloof tilt of their beaks. Yes, we were indeed back home to our own dimension. Professor Felice and I decided to celebrate together, and our oceanic chefs, Beverly and Jillian, now fully reconciled, joined forces to cook us up a most amazing dinner that featured, of course, different kinds of cheeses as a fromage homage to the adventure, as they called it. After numerous toasts and reminiscing about everything from chromite, culinary cheese challenges, barbecue sauce, rats the size of mice, and mice the size of rats, everyone was full and in good spirits. There were even a few alternate universe Madagascar desserts, like Malagasy cake and honey donuts, which were fantastic. As we finished eating, we wondered what would happen to the alternate dimension. Now, I'm skipping ahead a bit, but it turned out that Chad, after a while, had found a way to communicate with us via traversable wormhole radio waves, and he would occasionally send us an update. I found out that introducing cheese into their dimension did indeed start World War II, with the cheesemongers becoming too powerful for their own good, causing territorial disputes involving dairy farms. Thankfully, it was brief, for as soon as the cow, goat, and sheep population exploded, most countries were more interested in creating their own cheese than invading their neighbors. It even heralded a new age of peace and understanding, as various types of cheeses were invented and shared worldwide. They had also solved their mice the size of rats problem, but didn't go into many specifics, but something about a mutually agreed upon courier service in exchange for cheese rations. However, he did add again that it was mutually beneficial, so that meant the mice the size of rats were happy with the arrangement as well. I took another look at the sky, my ship, and the crew. We all continued to smile and laugh, joyful and grateful to be back in our own dimension. We were home. Everyone was relieved and happy, and now it was time to go home for real. Until I saw what day it was. We had been gone longer than I thought, and were in danger of missing my friend Benny and Alice's wedding. If we went home to Los Angeles, we'd never make it in time. We would have to go directly to Benny's hidden vacation island, and we would have to leave right away to make it on time. It was going to be a Christmas wedding, which made it even more logistically challenging. Time to get everyone together in the ready room. I met with the crew and told them about the situation. I told them I was happy to make any arrangements necessary if anyone wanted to go home now. But everyone smiled and thought a secret Christmas wedding on a secret island sounded delightful. Even Captain Flynn was excited about it, and Byron was especially interested in seeing the pirate lounge on the other side of Benny's island. I specifically mentioned it again to Bradley, who I knew did not like weddings. But he smiled, looked at Dolores, and replied that he didn't mind them as much now. Then it was settled. We'd head directly to my friend Benny's secret island for his secret wedding. I would radio ahead to make sure it was okay if I brought a few extra guests, but I didn't think that would be a problem. I mean, he did have his own secret island, so I felt a few extra guests wouldn't trouble him. And I will tell you all about the secret island Christmas wedding next time. But before I end this evening's story, I want to talk about something. I've talked before about the joys of coming home when it's your own place and your own house. But there's more to it than that. Coming home is a joy because it brings both comfort and a certain amount of nostalgia. And it doesn't just have to be your house. It can be driving through your old neighborhood or through your old town, driving past your old high school, or just coming back to your own dimension. Home can be a geographical area, not just your house or even where you grew up. It's just where you've always felt the most comfortable, and you get that same warm feeling when you arrive. Sure, your home neighborhood is never quite the same as when you left it, due to the additions of new restaurants, new housing developments, or new science facilities. But the feeling will always be the same for you. It's where you grew up. It's where you saw movies and dropped quarters into arcade games. Or it's just where you went to school. So enjoy that feeling every time you go home, no matter where it is or what dimension you're in. Good night, adventurers.
The Quiet Journeys of Professor Atwood was created, written, and performed by Chris Mancini and produced by White Cat Entertainment. It is a work of fiction. Maybe. Music and sound design by Ron Tansky at rontanskymusic.com. For more info and merchandise, including t-shirts, mugs, and blankets, go to whitecatentertainment.com.